Now I'm back in our Milwaukee studio with James Causey. James, a columnist for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. And James, we had a major case decided yesterday. Dominique Heaggan-Brown, former Milwaukee police officer who shot a Milwaukee man, an African-American man, which ended up being the trigger for some unrest in the community last year, was found not guilty by a jury yesterday. Were you surprised by that verdict?
No. And I believe a lot of African Americans were not surprised. I mean, when you saw the videotape, the body cam, you realize that, you know, everything happened so quick, you know, from the time that he got out of the car and ran to the time that the shooting took place. It was roughly, what, 11, 12 seconds. Mm-hmm. But regardless of any kind of body cam, any kind of film, any kind of videotape, anything, you never, hardly ever get a conviction of a police officer. It just doesn't happen, not here. Not anywhere in this country.
Well, we had the case up in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis.
Yeah, this comes right on the heels of the Philando Castile case just last week, where, you know, we saw in that instance where the officer fired 7 shots into a car on Philando Castile, a guy who worked in the public school system there, a guy who said he was stopped by police 49 times in his life. Can you imagine that? 49 times being stopped, and this officer fired shots in the car because he said, I have a gun, I have my concealed carry permit, and they had, you know, a couple of words passed, and next thing you know, this guy, the officer, fired 7 shots into the car, which had a 4-year-old in the back seat and another woman in the car. And we know a lot about that because right after the shooting, Philando Castile's girlfriend went to Facebook Live, and we actually saw him die on camera. And it's just the power of all these devices and that you get to see this stuff happen. It happens all the time. I don't think the conversation is really about officers getting off all the time, because we know that happens. And we're starting to see this more often because of phones and everybody has technology. Yeah. I think the conversation needs to be had on what needs to take place to get a conviction. I mean, we don't know what it takes. I mean, a guy says, I have a concealed carry permit, I have a gun, and you go to take the gun out and then you're killed. You have a case with Tamir Rice, who had a toy gun in a park, a 12-year-old.
In Cleveland, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, he's walking in this park, and an officer pulls up, a squad pulls up and fires 3 shots on this kid within 0.2 seconds or something like that. You have this case where...
now in this case, the officer, they were in pursuit of the victim. The officer fires 1 shot, which the DA agreed was defensible. Right. Seville Smith had a gun, and then he threw the gun over a fence, and then at that point the 2nd shot was fired. Right. But you were saying earlier it might have been hard for the jury to convict because things happen so quickly.
I think things happen so quickly, and because the way that what you're presented with, it's almost like, what was this man's intent? What was the officer's intent? Was his intent to kill, or was his intent, was he really scared? And I don't know. These officers always say that they're scared and they fear for their life. Going back to Philando Castile, he said that the smell of marijuana coming from the car with the baby in the back seat caused him to fear for his life, because if someone was smoking marijuana in his car, it's obviously that they didn't have any care for this child, so it's obviously that they wouldn't have any care for his life. So that put him on edge to the point that he feared for his life. It's like, it's almost hard to argue if a person is fearful of their life or not, and that makes it impossible to almost get a conviction.
So how's the community reacted so far?
Well, last night I was impressed. You know, there was no violence in Sherman Park, but
and the family was careful to call on the community to react peacefully.
Yeah, you know, I expected that, and you know, I don't think we have the stomach or the energy to go through what we went through again last year. That was very stressful, and a lot of people are still dealing with the impact of that. So, you know, I'm happy that the family is taking, you know, they're not going to stop, and they shouldn't. and now they're going to try to see if they could get some kind of financial compensation for
But
what
they
happened to their
filed a
loved one.
civil suit, so that case at least will continue.
Yeah, but you know, no amount of money could bring a Seville Smith back, and no amount of money could, you know, take that sting that was left on Milwaukee last year during the riots.